There are moments in a woman's life when the heart trembles before the truth long before the mind is ready to admit it. You know that moment when he says he doesn't want anything serious, yet his presence lingers in your life like an unfinished sentence. When he disappears into silence, only to reappear as if fate pulled invisible strings. When he stands at your door again, half certain, half terrified, and you, against all logic, feel something inside you lean toward him. It's confusing, intoxicating, and quietly exhausting, isn't it? And yet you stay. Not out of weakness, but because some unspoken energy refuses to let the story end. What if I told you that this confusion isn't random? That behind his mixed signals lies an ancient psychological blueprint, one Carl Jung recognized long before neuroscience could measure the chemistry of desire? What if this paradox, I don't want anything serious, but I want to see you, is not the contradiction you think it is, but the doorway to a deeper truth you've never been shown? You feel it already, don't you? That there is something beneath his words, beneath the surface level explanations, something raw, something real, something that his rational mind can't fully contain. You've sensed it in the way his eyes settle on you a second too long, in the way the air shifts when he leans closer, in the way his energy pulls toward yours even when his words try to push you away. His mind says no, his soul whispers, stay. And this tension between fear and longing is exactly where your power begins. Modern neuroscience has revealed that when a man is drawn to a woman, his brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, even if he insists he wants no commitment. His biology betrays him. His subconscious betrays him. And the deeper truth is this: he isn't trying to confuse you. He's trying to escape the part of himself that awakens when he's near you. Jung called this the inner split, the masculine psyche dividing itself between the desire for freedom and the longing for connection. A man who says he doesn't want a relationship but keeps returning to you is not undecided. He is divided. One part of him wants to maintain control. The other part is drawn to you with a force that unsettles him. And here is the truth most women never hear. When a man returns, even after declaring he wants nothing serious, it is because you awaken his anima, his inner feminine, the hidden archetype through which he connects to love, intimacy, and emotional depth. This awakening is not gentle. It is not rational. It feels like standing too close to a fire he doesn't know how to tame, which is why he retreats, only to be pulled back again, as if your presence stirs something ancient in him he cannot silence. This is where your suffering begins, not because he doesn't care, but because both of you are trapped inside a pattern neither of you fully understands. You interpret his withdrawal as rejection. He interprets his attraction as danger. You fear he doesn't love you enough. He fears that loving you will cost him his freedom, his identity, or even his sense of control over his own heart. But listen closely, because this is the shift that will change everything. His fear has nothing to do with your worthiness. Nothing. He is not afraid of you. He is afraid of what he becomes around you. The vulnerability, the softness, the longing. These are not emotions men are taught to handle. Most run from them, not because the connection is wrong, but because it is real. And here is where your next powerful mistake often happens. You try to soothe his fear with reassurance, or you chase him, or you pull back to punish him, or you beg your own heart to detach. None of these responses come from your feminine power. They come from wounds. They tighten the very fears that make him retreat. But somewhere within you, the deeper, wiser part, the part aligned with the essence of Heartsink X, knows another path exists. A path that doesn't rely on performing, proving, or persuading. A path where you no longer walk barefoot across emotional glass hoping he will finally recognize your worth. Imagine this. Instead of reacting from fear, you become the woman who stands firmly within her inner light. Jung said that transformation happens not through force, but through presence, not through argument, but through energy. And when you understand the inner conflict happening within this man, you stop taking his mixed signals personally. You stop shrinking to fit his hesitation. You stop suffering for what is not yours to carry, because the truth is his inconsistency is the shadow between you, the unspoken battlefield of his fears and your longing. But shadows are not meant to be fought. They are meant to be illuminated. And your presence, your calm, your clarity, your self-worth is the light that changes the entire dynamic. This is only the beginning. What comes next will reveal the hidden language of his behavior, the psychology behind his contradictions, and the magnetic shift that allows you to reclaim your power, not by controlling him, but by transforming the energy between you. As you continue down this path, something inside you begins to recognize the pattern, not just in him, but in yourself. That fluttering tension in your chest whenever he says he doesn't want a relationship, but still wants to see you. You know it well. It's that suspended moment where desire and doubt collide, where hope rises even as your intuition tightens its grip. You sense there is more beneath the surface, more than the words he offers, more than the logic he clings to. That's the space where the visible meets the invisible, where his conscious mind speaks one thing while the deeper instinctual part of him betrays a truth he's not ready to face. Jung understood this duality intimately. He revealed that the human psyche is not a single unified voice, but a chorus of opposing forces, each pulling in its own direction. So when a man says, "I don't want anything serious," he may genuinely believe it, because that is the voice of his ego, the part trained to fear surrender, vulnerability, or anything that threatens his illusion of control. But beneath that conscious layer lives a more ancient voice, one shaped not by logic, but by instinct, longing, chemistry, and the subtle memory of what it means to truly connect. That deeper voice is the one that keeps bringing him back to you. And at the biological level, neuroscience confirms this ancient inner conflict. The male brain, for all its complexity, reacts with undeniable simplicity to attraction. When a man is near a woman who awakens something in him, oxytocin pulses through his system, pulling him toward closeness even when his rational mind resists. His body leans toward you. His eyes soften. His energy shifts. These are not accidents. They are physiological truths he cannot talk his way out of. This is why he feels contradictory, why he says one thing and does another. Inside him, two forces collide, the part that craves freedom and the part that craves you. And here is the revelation that most women miss. You have far more influence in this inner conflict than you realize. Not through persuasion, not through pressure, not through emotional bargaining, but through presence. Have you ever noticed how sometimes in those rare, unguarded moments, he looks at you in a way that feels almost sacred? As if he's seeing not just your face, but something deeper, your essence, your softness, your fire. In those moments, you're witnessing his anima awakening, the part of him that longs for connection despite decades of conditioning that taught him to fear it. This awakening is terrifying for him, not because you are dangerous, but because he senses that you hold a mirror to a part of him he has never fully understood, a part that feels, a part that trusts, a part that desires intimacy beyond the physical. And it is precisely this awakening that makes him retreat. To him, the intensity of connection feels like losing control. It demands vulnerability, a currency he was never taught to handle. The masculine fear of the feminine is older than culture itself. In ancient myths, men feared the feminine, not because it was weak, but because it held the power to transform, to dissolve ego, to awaken buried truths, to pierce through armor and reach the soul. So when he pulls back after feeling close to you, understand this. It is not rejection, it is recoil, a reflex, a defense mechanism, his psyche protecting itself from the unknown. And yet, like the tide that retreats only to surge forward again, he returns to you because something in you speaks to something in him, something primal, something ancient, something profoundly human. But here is where the cycle becomes painful. Most women respond to his retreat with fear, fear of losing him, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough. And from that fear, they fall into one of three traps. They chase, they demand clarity, or they withdraw completely, hoping absence will create desire. But all three responses feed his fear rather than dissolve it. Chasing overwhelms him. Demanding clarity corners him. Withdrawing confirms his belief that intimacy leads to loss. And so the cycle repeats itself. Connection, retreat, longing, confusion. Yet, what Jung discovered, and what ancient priestesses knew long before modern psychology, is that there is another way, a way of moving with the masculine energy rather than against it, a way of honoring his fear without shrinking into your own, a way of holding your feminine essence so powerfully that his defenses begin to soften on their own. That way begins with presence. not performative softness, not strategic aloofness, but the kind of feminine presence rooted in self-trust, in emotional sovereignty, in an energy that says, I see your fear, but I am not defined by it. I feel your hesitation, but I will not collapse into mine. I honor the connection between us, but I honor myself first. This presence does not chase. It does not cling. It does not punish. It steadies. And in that steadiness, something shifts inside him. He senses safety, not the suffocating safety of dependency, but the liberating safety that allows him to explore his own vulnerability without feeling judged or threatened. Neuroscience tells us that emotional safety is the single catalyst that can rewire the male brain's fear response around intimacy. Ancient wisdom tells us that the feminine, when grounded, becomes a sanctuary for masculine transformation. And suddenly, those moments when his defenses fall, those rare glimpses into his deeper self, begin to occur more often. Not because you coax them out, but because you create the space where they can rise naturally. You are no longer reacting to the boy who fears commitment. You are relating to the man inside him who longs for connection. But to stand in this place of power, you must confront a shadow, not his, but the shadow between you, the unspoken fears, the unexpressed expectations, the silent wounds. This is where the next part of your transformation begins. As you enter this shadow space between you, the territory made of his unspoken fears and your unexpressed longings, you begin to see that this dynamic is not simply about him, nor is it entirely about you. It is an energetic field created by both of you, a silent ecosystem shaped by wound and desire, instinct and hesitation, past and possibility. Jung called this the third space, the invisible layer between two souls where transformation becomes possible. And it is here, in this shadowed territory, that the dance truly begins. He pretends nothing is happening inside him, but you've seen it. The flicker of softness in his eyes, the moment his breath catches when you look away, the quiet tension in his body when he tries to keep things casual. He hides behind nonchalance, behind the armor of independence, but something in him shifts every time he comes near you. You feel it. You've always felt it. But until now, you may not have known what it meant. What you're witnessing is not indecision, it is initiation. On some primal level, he knows that being with you requires shedding old skins. It demands emotional honesty, presence, vulnerability, qualities he may never have been given permission to explore. And so he retreats, not because the connection is wrong, but because it asks him to evolve. Yet here's the dangerous turning point, the place where most women unintentionally sabotage the connection. They interpret his fear as rejection. They interpret his retreat as disinterest. They interpret his confusion as a verdict on their worth. But his behavior is not a statement about your value. It is a reflection of his inner battle. The thing he fears most is not being with you. It is being seen by you. Because when a woman truly sees a man, not just his charm or strength, but his shadow, his insecurity, his tenderness, his longing, that is when transformation begins. And transformation terrifies him. That's why your presence is so powerful. You do not need to chase. You do not need to convince him of your worth. You do not need to beg for clarity. Instead, you become the quiet gravitational force that pulls him toward his own truth, not through effort, but through resonance. And in that resonance, something extraordinary begins to happen. He feels safe. Not safe in the sense of comfort or routine, but safe in the sense that his soul can breathe around you. Safe to lower the mask, safe to explore vulnerability, safe to feel something deeper without immediately needing to run from it. This is what ancient women understood before relationships had labels and timelines. They knew how to hold their feminine essence with such groundedness that the masculine felt naturally called to rise. In those moments when he's with you, when he's laughing without holding back, when he's looking at you with that softness he pretends he doesn't feel, his defenses momentarily collapse, and you see a glimpse of the man beneath the boy, the man beneath the fear. That is the moment Jung spoke of, the reaction that transforms both. But transformation doesn't happen through pressure or arguments. It happens in the quiet places between words, through energy, presence, and the frequency you embody. That is the true secret embedded in these ancient teachings. The connection deepens not because he decides it should, but because your presence inspires the part of him that was waiting to awaken. And here's a truth that may sting, yet liberates. If he truly felt nothing, he would not need to run. Indifference doesn't retreat, it simply disappears. Only fear retreats. And fear is always the shadow of desire. Think about it. If he didn't care, he would vanish effortlessly and permanently. Men are simple in their disinterest. They move on without lingering. But he lingers. He returns. He revisits the connection he says he doesn't want. And that contradiction is not a flaw. It is a confession in disguise. But now the question turns to you. How do you respond to this unspoken confession? Do you shrink to fit his fear? Do you harden your heart to avoid getting hurt? Do you run toward him hoping your devotion will soothe his doubt? Or do you step into the version of yourself that understands the sacred polarity between the masculine and feminine, the version that knows how to hold space without losing herself, the version that refuses to equate her value with his readiness? Because here's the truth that shifts everything. You don't transform the dynamic by clinging to him. You transform it by returning to yourself. Only when you stand rooted in your own clarity does the energy between you begin to settle. When you hold your desires without apology, when you stop trying to earn love, when you no longer contort yourself to avoid triggering his fears, something inside him begins to reorganize. He feels it, even if he can't explain it. He senses that something is different. He senses that you're no longer seeking validation from him. And, human beings, especially masculine beings, are irresistibly drawn to those operating from a higher state of emotional awareness. Suddenly, your absence is not punishment, it is freedom. Your presence is not pressure, it is invitation. Your clarity is not demand, it is direction. This is what Jung called individuation. This is what ancient wise women called sacred magnetism. This is what neuroscience now calls emotional coherence. And it is exactly in this energetic alignment that he begins to shift, not because you pushed him, but because you stop pushing yourself out of alignment to keep him close. As you rise into your emotional sovereignty, the dance between you changes. It becomes less chaotic, less reactive, and more intentional. He feels the difference. He responds to it. He is magnetized by it. Not because you tried to win him, but because you learned how to win yourself. And this moment where you stand firmly in your truth is where the next transformation begins. As you rise into this new state of inner clarity, this magnetic presence that does not chase, does not collapse, and does not shrink, the entire dynamic between you starts to shift in ways he cannot articulate but deeply feels. It's subtle at first, like the faint rearrangement of gravity. He senses the space you've claimed within yourself, the quiet certainty that radiates from a woman who knows what she wants and refuses to beg for it. And this, paradoxically, awakens something ancient in him. Neuroscience confirms that the male brain is wired to respond to challenge, not the kind born of games or manipulation, but the challenge of a woman who holds herself as a worthy prize. A woman who values her emotional integrity more than temporary attention. A woman who does not fear the absence of a man because she knows the presence she carries within herself. When you embody this grounded energy, you stop being an option and become an invitation, one he must rise to meet. And here is a profound truth. When a man says he doesn't want anything serious but still wants to see you, he is not rejecting the idea of love. He is rejecting the version of himself he fears he may become within love, the version that feels exposed, the version that must confront his wounds, the version that cannot hide behind detachment and casualness. But when you show him that you can hold both your desire and your boundaries without collapsing into neediness, you become the mirror he didn't know he was searching for. Not a mirror that flatters him, but one that reflects his potential, his strength, his depth capacity to love fully. And men, even the most avoidant ones, are drawn to the woman who reflects their higher self. Yet the most powerful part of this transformation is not what happens in him. It is what happens in you. Because as you hold this magnetic presence, you begin to see clearly that your worth has never depended on his readiness. You realize that you are not standing at the doorway of his commitment. You are standing at the threshold of your own awakening. This is where everything changes. You begin to understand that his hesitation is not your problem to solve. His pace is not yours to match. His fear is not yours to absorb. And when you stop making his emotional immaturity the measure of your desirability, a strange kind of calm fills your heart. A calm that is not indifference, but wisdom. You stop waiting for him to evolve, and instead, you evolve yourself. Ironically, this is the moment he feels the shift most intensely. The masculine psyche is attuned to changes in polarity. When you cling, he retreats. When you center yourself, he advances. When you embody emotional sovereignty, he feels a pull he cannot explain. It is not seduction, it is alignment. And here lies the paradox that few women ever discover. When you stop trying to make him choose you, he becomes more capable of choosing you. Because now, instead of relating to the fearful girl waiting for reassurance, he is relating to the woman who knows her worth and stands in it without trembling. Jung believed that when two people meet at the level of their higher selves instead of their wounds, an alchemical transformation occurs, one that elevates both. And this is exactly what begins to unfold when you embody emotional clarity. Imagine a moment where he repeats his familiar refrain, "I don't want anything serious." But this time, you're different. You are not shaken. You are not hurt. You are not scrambling to decode his words. Instead, you respond from the deepest truth within you, a truth that honors your desires without demanding his alignment. Something like, "I hear you, and I value what we share. At the same time, my heart is drawn to meaningful connection. I'm open to exploring this with you if it flows naturally, but I'm also open to what life brings if our paths diverge." No threat, no chase, no scarcity, only sovereignty. This single moment holds immense power because it delivers three silent messages directly to his subconscious. One, you are not trying to trap him. This dissolves his fear. Two, you are not relying on him for your sense of worth. This earns his respect. Three, you are open to life, with or without him. This activates his pursuit instinct. This is not strategy. This is psychology. This is energy. This is ancient feminine wisdom meeting modern neuroscience. When you articulate your desires with clarity while holding no attachment to the outcome, you embody the essence of the sacred feminine, what ancient tantric traditions called Shakti, the force that does not chase but magnetizes. And in response, the masculine within him awakens, Shiva, the grounded presence that rises to meet what is worthy. He begins questioning the story he's been telling himself. He starts wondering why the connection feels different, why your energy no longer lives in the space of fear, why he suddenly senses that losing is not an inconvenience, it is a loss. But here's the most beautiful part. Even if he does not rise, even if he never meets you at the level you now inhabit, you still win, because your transformation was never truly about him. It was about reclaiming the parts of you that dimmed each time you waited for his clarity. It was about remembering your own sacred worth. It was about recentering your soul and choosing yourself in the quiet moments when you once would have chosen him. This is the beginning of emotional liberation. The moment where you stop living in reaction to his confusion and start living from the clarity of your own truth. And that truth is leading you toward a new destiny, one that will continue unfolding in the final part. As this awakening deepens inside you, something profound begins to shift, not just in the way you see him, but in the way you see yourself. You start remembering the woman you were before fear tangled itself around your heart, before you confused your worth with someone else's willingness. A woman who once moved through the world with quiet certainty, who carried her softness without apology and her strength without armor. She has always been there, waiting beneath the noise of longing and self-doubt, and now she is rising. Because when you finally understand that his "I don't want anything serious" is not a verdict on your value, but a mirror reflecting his own fears, you reclaim something sacred, the freedom to love without losing yourself. You stop interpreting his inconsistency as evidence of your inadequacy and begin seeing it for what it truly is, his journey, not your identity. And in that moment, an entire universe within you shifts from contraction to expansion. This is the essence of emotional sovereignty. The moment you stop waiting to be chosen, the moment you realize that love is not something you chase, it's something you embody. The moment you understand that your heart was never meant to survive on scraps of attention, but to thrive in the presence of someone capable of meeting you fully. And from this clarity, three powerful choices emerge. choices that belong solely to you, not dictated by his fear or his pace. The first choice is conscious acceptance. To stay, knowing he may never evolve beyond this stage, but choosing the connection for what it is, not what you hope it becomes. This path requires emotional maturity, the ability to savor the present without clinging to the future. Some women choose this path for a season of their life, finding growth within the experience itself. The second choice is sacred boundary, to say with love and unwavering clarity that you desire a partnership with room for emotional depth, reciprocity, and forward movement. That while you appreciate the connection, you refuse to shrink your heart to fit within the limits of his fear. This is not rejection, it is redirection toward a life that aligns with the woman you're becoming. The third choice is the path of transformation, the middle ground where you hold space for connection while remaining unattached to the outcome, where you embody magnetic presence, allowing him to explore his vulnerability at his own pace without absorbing his uncertainty into your sense of self. This is the path where many men surprisingly rise, not because they were pushed, but because they finally feel safe to evolve. And regardless of which path you choose, the true victory is the same. You return to yourself. Because something extraordinary happens when a woman stands in her worth without wavering, when she no longer fears the loss of a man because she has stopped losing herself, when she listens not to the voice of scarcity but to the whisper of intuition. Her energy changes, her presence deepens, her boundaries strengthen, and this new version of her becomes magnetic, not only to him but to life itself. Suddenly, you are no longer anxiously waiting for his text. You are no longer interpreting his silence as self-doubt. You are no longer begging the universe for crumbs when you were born capable of holding abundance. Instead, you move through the world with the energy of a woman who knows she is enough on her own. And this, in its own mystical way, becomes the very energy that draws true love toward you, whether it arrives through him or through someone entirely new. Because here's the deepest truth that Jung understood, the truth that ancient mystics whispered into the fabric of human relationships long before science existed to confirm it. When you rise to your highest self, you attract what is meant for your highest self. Not the wounded reflections of who you used to be, but the aligned resonance of who you are becoming. And so, as you stand at this crossroads between longing and liberation, between fear and awakening, you begin to realize that the story was never just about him. He was the catalyst, not the destination, the mirror, not the meaning, the spark that illuminated the places inside you, still waiting to be claimed. Perhaps he will rise. Perhaps he will step into the fullness of what this connection could be. Perhaps he will finally understand that commitment is not confinement, but freedom. The kind of freedom found only in the arms of someone who sees you fully and loves you anyway. Or perhaps he will not. And that is okay, because whether he stays or leaves, you have already won. You have reclaimed your power. You have remembered your worth. You have awakened the version of yourself who no longer begs for love, but becomes it. And in this state, this radiant, sovereign, magnetic state, you will attract the love that was always destined for you. A love that honors your depth, a love that meets your heart without fear, a love that doesn't retreat at the first sign of intimacy, but leans in, a love that sees you, chooses you, and grows with you. This is not fantasy, it is alignment. This is not luck, it is embodiment. This is not hope, it is truth. So if these words have stirred something inside you, if they have awakened a knowing you buried under past disappointments, share them with a sister, a friend. Any woman walking through the same shadowed valley, mistaking a man's fear for a measure of her worth. Let her know she is not alone. Let her know she is powerful. Let her know she carries within her the ancient wisdom of every woman who ever loved deeply and rose stronger because of it. And when you're ready to dive even deeper into the art of magnetic presence and the psychology of masculine attraction, step forward into the next chapter. Because your transformation isn't ending here, it's just beginning.